I don't make prediction videos on this channel, outside of World Cups and Euros, unlike most football YouTube channels. But that doesn't mean that I can't still make videos that age like cow's milk that has been left on a park bench for a week in the searing heat of the Lut Desert of southeast Iran. About 5 months ago, I took a look back at a video that I made in 2017, in which I shared my views on who I felt were England's 7 best youth internationals at that time, and then seeing where those players are now, who I was right about, who I was wrong about, and any players I probably ought to have included, with the benefit of hindsight. Well, a fair few of you seem to enjoy me reflecting on a past video, so as the channel closes in on the heroic milestone of 500,000 subscribers, albeit we do all know that it should be at least 1 million by now, I thought that I would celebrate all things HITC Sevens by doing so again. In this video, I broadened my horizons, picking out who I felt were, at that time, the 7 most talented teenagers in all of world football. In theory, then, we should be talking about 7 seriously talented players, perhaps even among the best in the world right now. In practice, of course, it is notoriously difficult to predict anything in football, especially the fate of young players. So, just feel free to bear that in mind throughout. In case it isn't obvious enough from my voice, which sounds rather different, I will also put a filter on any clips from 2017 so that you can distinguish when I'm jumping between the 2 videos. Just like this. It's important to note that these are the teenagers who we feel are the most talented right now, not the 7 that have the most potential. Whilst there should be a fair bit of overlap between the 2, it's an important distinction. I included that clip from the introduction as a useful get-out-of-jail-free card, since it shows that I wasn't actually making a prediction, I was just saying that they were the 7 best at the time. I've no idea why I always used to say we when referring to the channel, when it has always just been me. Delusions of grandeur, perhaps. Or maybe I just used to be a schizophrenic. Anyway, let's get straight into it, shall we? Here are our 7 most talented teenagers in world football. Kai Havertz. I will share with you everything that I had to say about Kai Havertz in 2017, seeing as though his entire segment was only 30 seconds long. Yes, I did used to be a lot more concise than I am these days. Just sneaking in ahead of the likes of Tom Davies and Douglas Luiz is another gifted midfield prospect. Kai Havertz is an 18-year-old attacking midfielder with an understanding of the game beyond his limited years. He became Bayer Leverkusen's youngest ever Bundesliga player last year and their youngest ever goalscorer. A very technical and creative footballer, Havertz's style has already drawn comparisons with compatriot Mesut Ozil. He has made almost 40 appearances for Leverkusen already, but is yet to pick up a full cap with Germany. Now, on the face of it, you might say, what a great shout. Just 18 years old at the time, Havertz went on to score 20 goals for Leverkusen from midfield the following season. He joined Chelsea for a potential £71 million in 2020, and he scored the only goal to win the Blues the Champions League final during his debut campaign. And that is all true. But anyone who has been watching this channel for a very long time will know that I long felt that Havertz was a special talent, capable of achieving just about anything within the game, and he hasn't actually hit those heights since signing for Chelsea. I wasn't overly underwhelmed by Havertz's debut campaign at Stamford Bridge, moving to a new club, a new league, and indeed a new country at such a young age tends to take a bit of time to adapt. And obviously, his season still ended in the most spectacular way possible. But last season, and at the start of this season, he has failed to consistently exhibit his obvious talent. I don't think that Havertz is a false 9, and clearly, he is not the only player at Chelsea who isn't firing on all cylinders at this moment in time. But I do feel as though he is still talented enough to start taking games by the scruff of the neck and winning them on a more frequent basis. Make no mistake, Havertz has still done extremely well, now aged 23, and it is only because of my own extraordinarily high expectations of him that the tone of this segment isn't overwhelmingly positive. You may have noticed that I also mentioned Tom Davies there, who looks a little rejuvenated at Everton this season, having missed all of last season through injury, and Douglas Luiz, who had just gone on loan to Girona from Manchester City at the time, but who now plays for Aston Villa, and who I still like a lot.
Manuel Lilatelli.
Right, this one was even shorter than Havertz's segment, so I am just going to share my entire Lilatelli segment from 2017 as well.
Another teenager who is getting regular football at club level, but hasn't yet broken into his country's national team. It might not be long for Manuel Lilatelli, given the current plight of the Italians on the international stage. The youngster, who has been with AC Milan since the age of 11, will turn 20 next month. A well-rounded central midfielder who is also capable of playing in a slightly deeper role, Lilatelli is a good passer of the ball and has already scored an absolute peach of a goal against Gianluigi Buffon. He has made 44 appearances for AC Milan to date and has the potential to become a club legend.
Well, almost 5 years on, I'm not too ashamed of this one either. In terms of my predictions there, I was certainly wrong when I said that it might not be long until Lilatelli made his senior international debut, since that wouldn't arrive until September 2020, almost 3 years after that video came out. As a side note, in terms of the plight of the Italian national team that I mentioned, they have since won the Euros, but they also failed to qualify for a second successive World Cup. So, a bit of a mixed bag on that one. I also said that Lilatelli had the potential to become an AC Milan legend, and I still think that he did. But that isn't how it turned out. Following the arrival of Timothy Bakayoko, Milan advised Lilatelli that he could go out on loan to a lesser Serie A side, but without the option of a permanent. Insulted by their lack of faith in him, Lilatelli instead insisted that his loan move to Sassuolo contained an obligation for the club to sign him on a permanent basis. And given the fee involved was just 14 million euros, it proved to be a brilliant deal for the Black and Greens. Lilatelli rapidly became one of Serie A's star players at Sassuolo, winning international recognition in 2020 and making a move to Juventus in 2021. Despite his international debut arriving later than I had anticipated, Lilatelli has already won 24 caps in only the last 3 years, and he will set Juventus back around 35 million euros when his loan deal officially becomes a permanent one next summer.
Trent AlexanderArnold.
This probably seems like a bit of a no-brainer now, but Trent AlexanderArnold had played just 7 Premier League games the previous season when that video came out, and he was still widely tipped to be dropped once Nathaniel Clyne returned from his injury setback, a point that I acknowledged in that video, so do you know what? I'm taking this one as a massive W. Here is the end of my Trent segment from 5 years ago.
Liverpool's Young Player of the Year last season, AlexanderArnold already has 2 Champions League goals to his name this season, and he may even be targeting a spot in England's squad for the 2018 World Cup.
Well, AlexanderArnold did indeed make England's squad for the 2018 World Cup, despite only actually winning his first cap in a tournament warm-up fixture against Costa Rica. But his England career has been a persistently complicated one. Despite being the most creative and dangerous fullback on the planet at club level, AlexanderArnold has only won 17 caps for England, and it seems unlikely, unless England have an injury crisis there, that he will be Gareth Southgate's first choice in Qatar. That is because Liverpool play a very different system to England, combined with the fact that Gareth Southgate rarely is spoilt for choice in the right back or right wing back positions. Nonetheless, despite a tepid England career to date, still aged only 23, what AlexanderArnold has done at club level has been utterly remarkable. Few fullbacks retire with 66 assists to their name, yet AlexanderArnold has that many at 23, including 19 last season alone. Whilst he may have his own limitations, like all players, Trent has arguably been the second most important player in one of the best teams on the planet for the last couple of years, so for all of the can't defend jibes, this one has aged about as well as anyone could have hoped for.
Matthias De Ligt.
A real teenage sensation, Matthias De Ligt was the youngest player in my 7 back in 2017, yet he still came in 4th. This is what I had to say about him at the time.
The next 4 players in this 7 have not just broken into their club sides, but also their national teams. We start with Matthias De Ligt, a centre-back who only turned 18 in the summer, but has already won 3 caps for the Dutch national team. The Netherlands may not be the footballing powerhouses that they once were, but that is still some achievement. The youngster broke into the Ajax first team in September 2016 and soon became their second youngest goalscorer after Clarence Seedorf. Having made 40 first team appearances to date, his international bow came in March, making him Holland's youngest debutant in 86 years.
Capped 3 times by the Netherlands at the time then, De Ligt has now won 38 caps for the Orange, and he has been transferred, twice, for more than €67 million on both occasions, to 2 of the biggest clubs in world football. Nonetheless, it hasn't all been plain sailing for the 2018 Golden Boy Award winner, who started captaining Ajax at the age of 18, as his start to life at Juventus following his potential €85.5 million move there was choppy to say the least. Expected to be gradually introduced into the first team setup in Turin, an injury to Giorgio Chiellini meant that the Dutchman was thrust straight into Juve's starting 11, where he clearly struggled. He adapted over time though, as you would expect of someone so talented, hence why Bayern Munich was still willing to fork out a potential €67 million on him this summer. If you'd have asked me when I made that video, I would have said that in 5 years' time, I would expect De Ligt to be one of the best centre-backs in the world. I wouldn't actually put him quite there yet. I would probably say that he is just outside of the top 10, but he has hardly fallen off a cliff. And at the time, I don't think that anyone could have disagreed with his inclusion at least in their top 7.
Christian Pulisic.
Alright, I am going to split this one in half, a bit like Sudan in 2011, albeit I wasn't responsible for that one. So here is the first half of what I had to say about a then teenage Christian Pulisic in 2017.
We kick off our countdown of the top 3 with a teenager that many expect to become the finest US soccer player, as they call it, of all time. Of course, similar predictions were made about Freddie Adu, who's now out of contract aged 28 and selling vacuum cleaners on Twitter. But unlike Adu, Pulisic has already become a regular in a top European division.
Okay, so aside from Freddie Adu catching an unnecessary stray bullet there, as if the poor lad hasn't already been through enough, I did sense a slight snobbishness and derision towards the Americans when I used the word soccer there. Did you notice that?
To become the finest US soccer player, as they call it, of all time.
As they call it? Yeah, there was definitely some snobbishness there, despite the fact that the British invented the word and used it frequently instead of, or at least interchangeably with football, up to the 1950s and 60s. You must forgive me, US viewers, for I was young and foolish, whereas now I am brilliant, of course. Here is the second half.
A creative and technical wide man who probably looks at his best when deployed on the left flank. Pulisic has a good turn of pace and can strike a ball with either foot. Born in Pennsylvania, Pulisic briefly played in the youth side of English non-league team Brackley Town as a child, but has been with current club Borussia Dortmund since 2015. Despite only recently having turned 19, Pulisic has already racked up 73 appearances for the Bundesliga side, and he has 9 goals from 20 caps for the United States.
So, fortunately, Pulisic isn't now selling vacuum cleaners on Twitter like Freddie Adu, at least as far as I'm aware, and if he is, it is very much a side hustle. I think that he is well on his way, at the age of 23, towards becoming the finest American soccer player of all time, and you could argue that, at his best, he already is. Pulisic has already won 51 caps for the USMNT, which is remarkable given his age, and in January 2019, he joined Chelsea for a fee of £58 million, returning to Dortmund on loan for the remainder of the season. His first season at Chelsea, the 2019-20 campaign, was very impressive, and he was just hitting his very best form and had actually already scored when he picked up a nasty injury against Arsenal in the 2020 FA Cup final. We will never know what Pulisic's progression might have looked like without that setback, but I don't think that he has returned to those heights since. Age 23, there is obviously no reason why he can't still do that, and it is vital for the USMNT, as their star man, that he finds some kind of form for Chelsea ahead of this winter's World Cup.
Kylian Mbappe.
The man who I very nearly put top of my 7 back in 2017, and probably should have done to be honest, before changing my mind at the last second. Here is what I had to say about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle lookalike, 5 years ago.
As talented as the others in this 7 are, the top 2 are frankly a class apart, and whilst it was easy putting them above the rest, deciding between the 2 was a little more challenging. Our runner-up is Kylian Mbappe, who is staggeringly good for his age. Quick, skillful, and unpredictable, he's brilliant on the ball and can be devastating in front of goal. He had an incredible campaign with Monaco last season, scoring 26 goals in 44 games, and he's still only 18. Capped 10 times by France already, Mbappe will turn 19 later this month, and is now playing in a fantastic forward line made up of himself, Edison Cavani, and the world's most expensive player, Neymar. He has 6 goals in 18 games since joining the free-spending Parisians, and he won the 2017 Golden Boy Award.
Well, that all seems fairly obvious and straightforward, and still a fairly accurate description of Kylian Mbappe 5 years on, though it is worth noting that it has been a pretty whirlwind 5 years for the Frenchman since I made that video. In the 2017-18 season, he only actually managed 13 league goals at PSG, but he ended the season with a couple of stunning performances in Russia as France won the FIFA World Cup. It was arguably the most impressive World Cup that a teenager had enjoyed since Pelé in 1958, and Mbappe's star has burnt extremely bright ever since, though not without a fair deal of criticism. In the last couple of seasons, he has scored 42 and 39 goals respectively for PSG, and he was widely anticipated to join Real Madrid, having suggested that he would do so on a free transfer over the summer just gone. That would have been both a PR and a footballing disaster for PSG, hence why they handed him the largest contract in all of world football, and a string of almost unprecedented reported assurances, which eventually won him over. There has since been a little bit of conflict between Mbappe and Neymar at PSG, but I do think that it is inarguable that Mbappe is one of the best players in world football, and that he and Erling Haaland should be the best centre-forwards in world football for most of the next decade. If he doesn't win a Ballon d'Or at some stage, something will have gone badly wrong.
Gianluigi Donnarumma.
First and second in my 7 from 2017 are now teammates at PSG, and I will play the full Donnarumma clip for you all as well, and yes, I do realise that I have almost played the entire original video at this point.
Goalkeepers tend to mature and peak a little later than outfield players, and as such, they can often be a few years into their 20s before being trusted as a regular starter between the sticks. That makes the achievements of Gianluigi Donnarumma, AC Milan's number 1 and already an Italian international aged 18, all the more impressive. Incredibly, he has been starting for Milan since the beginning of the 2015-16 season now, and already has 95 appearances for the Milan Giants to his name. The youngster stands at 6 feet and 5 inches tall, and he has outstanding reflexes. He has won 4 caps for Italy already, and should now become the Azzurri's undisputed first choice, following the retirement of Gianluigi Buffon.
Donnarumma has now won 46 caps for Italy, just the 42 more than he had when that video came out, and he is well on course to become the most capped male footballer of all time, assuming that he has at least semi-decent longevity, as goalkeepers tend to, and there isn't a ridiculously talented Italian keeper that comes along before he turns 35 and usurps him. Donnarumma amassed more than 250 appearances for AC Milan before signing for PSG, but he hasn't had things all his own way in the French capital. Rotated last season with Keylor Navas under Maurizio Pochettino, which didn't seem particularly conducive to either of them producing their best form. I think Donnarumma will be Christophe Gaultier's nailed-on starter for most of this season though, and ultimately, whilst I don't think that he should have topped my 7 in 2017, it should have been Mbappe. Donnarumma has already achieved a great deal at the age of 23, especially for a goalkeeper, and he is far too good not to continue in a similar vein long term. So those were the 7 that I picked out in 2017, but who did I miss? Who shouldn't have featured? And what about some of your suggestions at the time in the comments? I don't think that the 7 is too bad, to be honest, compared to some of my others that I could and possibly will look back on in the future. Although Pulisic was perhaps a bit fortunate to come third and hasn't really kicked on since 2020, and Mbappe undoubtedly should have come out on top. The most obvious omission, you could argue, is Erling Haaland. though it is important to note that he is a year younger than anyone else who featured, and when that video came out, Haaland was just 17 and had only actually scored 4 goals in 20 games for Molde at the time. Given that the video was the 7 best teenagers at the time, and not the 7 with the most potential, there is no way that he really could have featured. Albeit, even if it had have been based on potential, I'm not saying that I would have included him, and I probably wouldn't have had any idea just how good he was going to become, like most people, until at least 2019. In terms of those within the right age bracket then, the likes of Fede Valverde, Mason Mount, Eder Militao, Jules Koundé, Declan Rice, Federico Chiesa, Lautaro Martinez, and Theo Hernandez have now all become excellent players. And a couple of them would probably have aged better than a couple of the players that I did actually include. Now to the comments, where suggestions included the likes of Phil Foden, Alexander Isak, and Ben Woodburn, so a wide range of great, alright, and terrible shouts, purely in terms of how they have aged at this moment in time. Lots of people threw Ryan Brewster's name into the hat, who I saw come off the bench for Sheffield United against Hull City last weekend. Chris Kwan said that Trent wasn't that talented, which I think he has proven to be false. And hats off to those who stuck by Martin Odegaard, who was being labelled as a flop, having gone on loan to Heerenveen at the time, ludicrously so in my view given his age, but now looks to be a fine player at Arsenal. So that is it for today's video, but thank you all very much as ever for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know if you did and whether you would like to see more videos within this format in the future. Yeah, you know, because it's always good to hear what you have to say. Hit the like button if you did enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts, as I say, down below in the comments, and make sure that you're subscribed. I mean, why not? And have notifications turned on for HITC Sevens. You can also find me on Twitter or on Instagram via the username @HITC Sevens on both, should you wish to do so. Cheers, and have a sensational day.